The wind that danced over the Kalungi River always seemed to know her name. Nima, with her bare feet brushing the warm dust and her laughter echoing through the acacia trees, was the kind of girl people noticed. Not because she tried, but because something about her felt like sunlight. She could quiet crying babies with a song, talk a stubborn goat into returning home, and speak to the river as if it were her sister. At 17, Nima was already the heart of her village. She lived in a modest mud-walled home with her widowed mother and 2 younger brothers. Her father, a fisherman, had drowned in a storm when she was a child, and since then, Nima had filled the silence of that loss with her kindness. But in the quiet corners of her heart, she held dreams. Not of cities or wealth, just love. A man who saw her not as a duty, or as one to be managed, but as someone worth listening to. Her friends often whispered of boys who sent secret bracelets or left mangoes on their doorsteps, but Nima had never felt the thrill of a true glance that lingered. Until Kito. He came with a group of young men from Umbal Valley, arriving during the harvest to trade woven baskets and spices. His skin was dark and smooth like river stone, and he carried himself like someone who never rushed, as if the world waited for his words. On his first day in Kalungi, Nima saw him under the fig tree, teaching a small boy how to carve birds from soapstone. She watched from afar, pretending to sort cassava. The next morning, he was at her family's compound, delivering baskets. "Your mother makes the best millet in all of Kalungi," he smiled, his eyes sparkling. Nima laughed, surprised. "That's because I make it. She just takes the credit." Kito chuckled, then tilted his head. "Maybe one day, you'll make it for me." It was a small thing. A joke, perhaps. But Nima felt something shift inside her, like the moment before rain when the earth seems to hold its breath. Over the next few days, they crossed paths often, once at the river where he helped her collect water, again at the village fire where he sat near her without saying much. He didn't speak like other men. He asked questions. He listened. "You are not like the others," she said to him one evening as the stars peeked through the branches above. "I come from the mountains," Kito replied. "Our ways are different." She smiled. Different is not always bad. That night, she dreamed of a house with a wide veranda, children laughing in the distance, and a man whose footsteps she could recognize in the dark. 2 weeks later, Kito returned to Umbal, but not before whispering, "I will come back. With my family. For you." Nima didn't believe him, not fully. Promises were like river frogs, quick to leap and hard to catch. But something about his eyes made her hope. Her mother noticed the change in her, how Nima combed her hair more often, how she stared at the hills after sundown. And then, one quiet afternoon, 3 donkeys arrived at their compound, dust trailing behind them. Kito was at the front, dressed in fine white cloth, with 2 older men behind him. His mother, a strong-looking woman with silver beads in her hair, walked with a stick carved from mahogany. They came with yams, goats, and baskets of salt. Kito's mother spoke with Nima's mother behind closed doors. Outside, Kito waited, eyes scanning the sky. Later, as the sun dipped low, Nima's mother called her into the hut. Her eyes were moist, but her smile was steady. "Kito wants to marry you, child," she said softly. "He has spoken well. His family has honor." Nima's hands trembled slightly. "He came back?" Her mother nodded. "With his whole house behind him. He is serious." Nima stepped outside. Kito saw her and stood. For a moment, nothing needed to be said. She simply nodded, and the look in his eyes, relief, joy, and deep affection, told her this was real. The village rejoiced. A wedding was arranged within the moon cycle. Women sang by the river. Elders brought out old drums and sweet wine. Nima's friends teased her endlessly, helping her pack her clay pots and stitched cloths. But no one spoke of Macau and Tindo, Kito's brothers. They had come with the marriage party, quiet and observant. Macau, the eldest, had a voice like thunder and eyes that watched everything. Tindo, in the middle, hardly spoke, but his hands never stopped working, carving, cooking, fixing things around the compound. Nima assumed they were simply there as family. No one told her otherwise. As she stood by the river one last time before her wedding, watching her reflection ripple with the current, a strange feeling passed through her, like a shadow over a clear pond. She brushed it off. She was in love. She was going to a new life. What more could she want? The entire village of Kalungi shimmered under the weight of joy. From dawn, the sound of drums, flutes, and ululations filled the air. Women danced barefoot in circles, their wrappers swirling like petals. Men hoisted gourds of honey wine and sang old songs that spoke of harvests, of births, of unions blessed by ancestors. In the heart of it all stood Nima, dressed in a deep red lasso cloth embroidered with gold thread. Her arms were stacked with bangles that jingled with each movement. Henna swirled up her hands like creeping vines. Her hair had been braided into a crown, wrapped with beads and cowrie shells. She looked like a queen carved from the land itself. But inside, her heart trembled. Not from fear, at least not the kind she could name. It was something else. The weight of change. The reality that tonight she would leave her mother's hut, her river, her mango tree, and enter a world she barely knew. "You are ready," whispered her cousin Jalea, tightening the last knot in Nima's waist sash. Nima nodded, smiling nervously. "Does every bride feel like she's walking into the unknown?" Jalea grinned. "Every one of them. But not every bride walks into it with love already waiting for her." Outside, the women sang the farewell songs. "Greater than daughter of the river," carried by drums. "You will cook for another fire. You will dream under another roof. But may your heart never be forgotten." As the sun dipped low, Nima was led toward the ox-drawn cart that would carry her to her new home in Umbal Valley. The journey took 2 hours, but she hardly noticed. Keto rode beside her, his hand gently resting over hers. He said little, but his presence wrapped around her like a warm shawl. When they reached the compound, it was glowing. Dozens of lanterns hung from trees, casting flickering light over clay walls. Women rushed forward to sprinkle flower petals, and drums beat low like a heartbeat. Mama Yaya welcomed Nima with a bowl of milk and honey. "May your life here be sweet," she said solemnly. Nima stepped over the threshold of her new home. The house was larger than she expected, 3 separate rooms, a shared kitchen, and a central courtyard filled with potted herbs and a stone fire pit. Inside, laughter echoed, and the smell of roasted meat drifted through the air. That night, after the final song faded and the guests were gone, Nima was led into a room set apart from the rest. The Suhag room. It was bathed in soft light from an oil lamp. The walls were draped in red cloth, and the bed was covered in white cotton, petals scattered across it like blessings. A small table held dates, nuts, and a pitcher of rose water. There was incense burning, its scent sweet and dizzying. Nima sat at the edge of the bed, her veil pulled low, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Then the door opened. It was Keto. He stepped inside, silent, reverent. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he knelt in front of her, gently lifting her veil. His eyes searched hers, not for possession, but permission. "Are you afraid?" he asked softly. Nima nodded faintly. "I will not rush you," he said. "This is our beginning, not our test." That night, Keto touched her with care. Not with hunger, but with gentleness. They whispered between kisses, shared childhood memories, and laughed nervously when the oil lamp nearly went out. When they finally lay wrapped together, Nima felt something she had never known before, a feeling of being safe and claimed, not as a prize, but as a partner. She fell asleep with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat like a new song. But the next morning brought more than sunlight. When Nima woke, Keto was already gone. A soft knock came at the door. It was Mama Yaya. She smiled as she stepped inside with a tray of warm millet porridge and spiced tea. "You are now one of us," she said, placing the tray down. "Today, you rest. Tonight, the house continues to bless you." Nima blinked. "Tonight?" Mama Yaya only smiled and left. The words echoed in her ears like a forgotten drumbeat. That afternoon, Nima wandered the compound. She found Keto tending to a goat in the corner pen. "I didn't know you wake before the rooster," she teased. He smiled, wiping his brow. "It's tradition. The groom serves the house the morning after." She paused, then added, "Your mother said something strange." Keto didn't meet her eyes. She said, "Tonight, the house continues to bless me. What does that mean?" Keto's face shifted, just slightly. Before he could answer, Macau, the eldest brother, appeared beside the gate. "Ah, the bride," he said with a half-smile. "You glow brighter than the lanterns did." Nima smiled politely. Keto cleared his throat. "We'll talk later." That evening, Nima was led again to the same bridal room. Fresh petals had been placed. The sheets were changed. Incense burned again. She assumed Keto would come again. But when the door opened, it was not Keto. It was Macau. Her heart thudded. He stepped in, slowly, with calm confidence. "Good evening, wife." Nima stood instantly, her hand clutching the edge of the bedsheet. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, confused. There's a mistake. I think you meant." "No mistake," Macau replied. "I am your husband too. As is Tindo. This is our way." Nima stared at him, the words turning into ash in her mouth. Without another word, she darted past him, barefoot, running down the corridor until she reached the open courtyard. She found Mama Yaya seated on the porch, folding cloth. "Mama," she gasped, her voice shaking. Mikau came to the bridal room. "Why? Why would he?" Mama Yaya looked up slowly, not startled. Not alarmed. "Because this is our custom," she said softly. "A wife in this house is not a wife to one. She is a wife to all. Just as our grandmothers were." Nima took a step back. Her breath came in short bursts. "But no one told me," she whispered. "Not Keto. Not you. You would not have understood then," Mama Yaya said, folding another cloth. "Understanding comes after experience, not before it." Nima stood frozen in the courtyard, the cold of the stone floor seeping into her skin. The lights flickered gently. Somewhere in the house, a baby cried. A rooster crowed. The world carried on. But inside her, everything had changed. The stars hung like judgment in the sky. Nima stood in the center of the courtyard, her breath misting in the night air, heart thudding as if it too wanted to escape the compound. She had never felt more betrayed. From the darkness, soft footsteps approached. It was Keto, his face tight with worry. "Nima," he began. But before he could reach her, she raised a trembling hand. "Don't." He stopped. She turned to face him, her voice brittle. "Why didn't you tell me?" Keto's jaw flexed. "I wanted to. I tried." "No," she cut in. "You tried to hide it. You brought me here like a prize. Like a goat gifted to the entire family. That's not what you are," he said quickly. She folded her arms across her chest. "Then what am I, Keto?" "Because your brother just walked into our bedchamber as if it belonged to him. As if I belonged to him." Keto stepped closer, his voice low. "It's our way, Nima. In Mbal, wives belong to the house, not just the man. My mother, her mother, their mothers, all lived this way. It's about unity, not shame." Tears welled in Nima's eyes. "Unity? Or silence? Because no one thought I deserved the truth." Keto looked down, ashamed. "I thought. If you knew, you wouldn't come." "You were right," she said, stepping back. Silence fell between them. Behind them, the house flickered with warm yellow light. Inside, the family laughed softly over their evening meal. Outside, Nima's world spun. Later that night, Nima sat alone in the room once meant to be a bridal haven. She had bolted the door, removed the petals, blown out the incense. Her henna-stained hands curled into fists. A soft knock came at the door. "Nima," came Mama Yaya's voice. "May I sit with you?" Nima hesitated. Then opened it slowly. Mama Yaya entered with calm grace. She didn't carry a tray. Just herself, and a history written in the lines on her face. "I was like you once," she said, lowering herself to the floor beside Nima. "Full of fire. Full of questions. My husband's 2 brothers were strangers to me the day I arrived." Nima looked at her sharply. "And you accepted it?" "No," Mama Yaya replied. "Not at first. I wept. I broke things. I ran into the fields one night and slept beside a goat just to be alone. But in time, I saw something else." "What?" 3 men who never fought over me. Who protected me. Who raised children with me. Who never let me carry water alone. I was loved 3 times over, not divided, but multiplied." Nima shook her head. "But I didn't choose that. I chose Keto. And you still have him," Mama Yaya said softly. "But here, love is not a possession. It's a shared root that feeds the whole tree." Nima's voice broke. "But I feel lost." Mama Yaya placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not lost. You're just at the beginning. Give your heart time to grow into the soil." That night, Nima didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching the lantern flicker as the house around her quieted. Her thoughts tangled like the hem of her wedding cloth, torn and beautiful all at once. In the early hours before dawn, she made a decision. She would not run. Not yet. She needed to understand what kind of world she had entered before she could decide whether to leave it. For the next many days, Nima moved like a shadow. She rose early, swept the courtyard, cooked the morning porridge, and fetched water from the well, but always in silence. The sparkle in her eyes had dulled. Her smile, once quick and warm, now lingered only out of politeness. She avoided the brothers. Especially Mikau, the eldest, whose presence made her spine stiffen. He, too, kept his distance. When their paths crossed in the kitchen or the garden, he would greet her with a respectful nod, but nothing more. Still, she could feel his eyes, watchful, guarded, as though he wanted to speak but didn't know how. Tindo, the middle brother, was the quietest of the 3. He spent most of his time carving small animals from wood or sitting under the mango tree stringing beads for the village children. He never came near her room, never said much, just offered small kindnesses in silence. Once, she woke to find her broken sandal mended and placed carefully at her doorstep. Kito, her chosen husband, was a man torn in two. He tried to comfort her at night, to sit beside her in the courtyard and offer laughter like old times, but she withdrew, wounded by the depth of his omission. "I didn't know how to explain," he whispered one night as they sat by the fire. "I've lived this tradition my whole life. I didn't think of it as betrayal. But I see now that I made you a stranger in your own home." Nima stared at the flames, her voice barely audible. "You didn't give me a choice." Kito didn't reply. His silence was heavy with regret. In the village, whispers had begun. "She hasn't accepted the brothers yet," the market women said. "She's proud," some murmured. "From Kalungi, what does she know of our ways?" But others watched her with a different kind of awe. A few women, older, seasoned, would nod at her in quiet respect. "She has fire," they'd say. "Like we once did." One evening, Mama Yaya called Nima to sit with her beneath the jacaranda tree. They shelled groundnuts in silence for a while before Mama Yaya spoke. "You are not wrong to feel what you feel," she said softly. "But fire left burning too long either warms the house or burns it down. You must decide which one you want." Nima looked at her, tired. "What if I want neither?" Mama Yaya smiled gently. "Then you will remain smoke. Floating, shapeless. That is no way to live." That night, Nima walked out into the fields behind the house, where the air was wide and unjudging. She stood beneath the stars, her shawl pulled tight against the cool air, and wept, not out of weakness, but out of the ache of transformation. She had always been so sure of herself. But here, she was forced to unlearn certainty. In the following days, something within her shifted. She didn't forgive, not yet. But she began to observe. She watched Mikau defend a child who had broken the family's water pot, shielding him from punishment. She saw Tindo, the silent one, tending to a sick dog for days, nursing it with herbs and water until it walked again. She noticed how Kito rose before dawn every morning to make sure the goats were fed so she wouldn't have to touch the work. They were not monsters. But neither were they saviors. They were men. Men born into a system that had never questioned itself. And she, Nima, daughter of the river, was the first ripple in generations of still water. One evening, she stood in the courtyard as Mama Yaya prepared a stew. Tindo sat nearby, stringing beads again. Kito returned from the field, dusty and quiet. Mikau was in the doorway, watching the firelight. Nima looked at them, all three, and spoke for the first time in days. "If I am to remain in this house," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I will not be a secret keeper. My daughters, if I ever have them, will know the truth from the start. I will not let silence be the roof over their heads." No one replied at first. Then Mikau stepped forward. "You are not like any woman we've known," he said. "That may be our curse. Or our blessing." Tindo looked up from his beads. "Blessing," he said simply. Nima turned to Kito. He didn't speak. He just nodded, his eyes full of sorrow and hope. That night, for the first time since her wedding, Nima slept without locking the door. Not in surrender, but in decision. She would not run. She would not break. She would learn. But she would do so on her turtle. A slow drag in Nima's bones, a flutter in her belly that wasn't quite hunger. The scent of goat milk turned her stomach. The once soothing aroma of roasted cassava made her nauseous. At first, she thought it was the weather. The rains had finally come, softening the hard soil of Umbal Valley, breathing green into the brown. Everything was blooming again, except her appetite. Then came the dizziness. The sudden tears. The strange, quiet joy that filled her when holding the neighbor's baby. It was Mama Yaya who noticed first. Nima had been washing herbs in the basin when the old woman appeared silently behind her, watching like a spirit. "You're glowing," Mama Yaya said softly. Nima looked up, startled. I think I'm tired." "Maybe," Mama Yaya said, stepping closer. "Or maybe your blood is singing for another heart." Nima froze. Later that day, she went to the midwife in secret. She sat in the reed hut, surrounded by dried leaves and calabashes, while the midwife gently pressed her stomach, murmuring ancient words of woman wisdom. When it was done, the old woman smiled. "There is a river forming inside you," she whispered. "You carry life." Nima walked home slowly, her hands trembling. Pregnant. The word echoed in her chest like a drumbeat. She sat under the tamarind seedling, now nearly knee-high, and stared at the hills beyond the valley, unsure whether to cry or laugh. But the real storm came that night. At dinner, She was quiet. Too quiet. And the brothers noticed. After the meal, as the sky turned purple with dusk, she called all three of them to the courtyard. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice even. They sat before her, side by side. "I'm pregnant." A moment of stunned silence. Then Keto stood quickly, his mouth half open in joy and disbelief. "Nima. That's..." "Wait," she said, raising a hand. "I don't know who the father is." The joy in the air paused like breath caught in the throat. Mikhail rubbed his forehead slowly. Tindo's hands went still in his lap. Keto sat down again. "I was with you first," Keto said gently. "Yes," Nima replied. "But others came after. Before I understood what was happening." They sat in silence. Not with anger, but with the deep stillness of men realizing they were walking into a storm not of her making, but theirs. Mikhail was the first to speak. "Then we are all fathers." Nima's eyes widened. "You don't want to know for sure?" Mikhail shook his head. "That child will grow up knowing it was born into a home of three men who love it. Not of suspicion. Not of shame." Tindo nodded. "Blood is not what makes a father. Presence does." Keto took her hand. "And no matter what, you're the mother. That makes this child sacred." Nima looked at the three of them, different in voice, body, and spirit, but for the first time, they felt like one to her. Tears rose in her eyes, not from fear or confusion, but from a love that didn't look like the stories she'd been told as a girl. This was something else. This was a love that defied rules. In the weeks that followed, Nima's world changed again. Mikhail took over the heavy chores. He brought her bowls of fruit and made sure she walked in the shade. Tindo carved her a low stool with a curved back to ease her growing discomfort and left it outside her door with no note. Keto sang softly to her belly every night, humming lullabies in the language of Umbal ancestors. The village watched in awe. Some whispered disapproval. But most saw something powerful, a woman once broken now walking through the world with her chin high and three men behind her like silent guards. Mama Yaya beamed with pride. "You have made this house new again," she told Nima one morning. "Not by changing yourself, but by changing the way you were seen." Nima smiled faintly, cradling her swelling belly. "I didn't plan this. No mother ever does," Mama Yaya replied. "We simply grow into the shape of what love asks us to become." One night, Nima sat under the moonlight, her feet resting on a woven mat, the wind playing with the edge of her shawl. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the faint kick of the child within. "I don't know what you will call me," she whispered to her unborn baby. "Or what they'll call you. But you will never doubt that you were loved, by all of us. From the very beginning." The stars blinked above her like blessings. The tamarind seedling swayed beside her. And inside her, life moved, quiet, growing, real. The heart opens. The days in Umbal Valley softened around Nima like warm cloth. Her belly grew, as did the silent agreement between the four of them, Nima and the three brothers, that love, like water, must find its own shape. There were no longer questions of whose child she carried. Only preparation. Joy. A quiet reverence for what had rooted in their shared soil. And something else began to bloom. Nima's heart. It happened slowly. She had long believed that love only arrived once. That the look in Keto's eyes when he first appeared under the fig tree in Kalungi was all her heart would ever need. But now, as the days passed and each brother revealed his own kind of affection, Nima's heart stretched wider than she thought possible. Keto remained the soft center of her world, gentle, nurturing, the one who still whispered, "You're the beat of this house." But Tindo was a different kind of silence. His love showed not in words but in devotion. Every day he carved small gifts for her unborn child, a rattle in the shape of a bird, a tether from polished wood, a small stool carved with her name. He rarely touched her, but one afternoon as she winced from back pain, he wordlessly kneeled behind her and pressed his palms to her lower spine. His hands were warm. Healing. When she turned to thank him, he only gave a small nod and returned to carving. And Mikhail. He remained distant for a while, guarded, as though afraid his strength might bruise her. But one night, during a storm, when thunder cracked like war drums, Nima couldn't sleep. She found him sitting outside, staring into the rain. "You're not afraid of anything, are you?" she asked. He looked up. "Only of failing someone who needs me." She stepped closer. "You think I need you?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, he said, "I think you deserve to feel safe. Always." It was the first time he had said anything to her that wasn't a command or an apology. That night, for the first time, she saw him as more than the intimidating older brother. She saw the man beneath the shield. One afternoon, the wind carried bad news. A rider from Kalungi came, breathless, dust-covered. Nima's mother was ill, gravely. The brothers gathered immediately, preparing a donkey cart, supplies, and shade cloth. But Nima stood frozen. "I can't go," she whispered, clutching her round belly. "I'm too far along." Her voice cracked. "She doesn't even know." Tears streamed down her face. "She doesn't even know I'm going to be a mother." Keita wrapped his arms around her. "We'll send someone. We'll write. We'll—" "No," she said firmly. "I have to do something. Anything." That night, she sat on the veranda, weaving a shawl from red and white cloth, the colors of Kalungi and Umbal. She stitched it for hours, eyes blurred with tears, her fingers aching. Tindo brought her hot water and wiped her brow. Macau sat nearby, saying nothing, just present, an anchor. By dawn, the shawl was finished. She sent it with a note. "Greater than Mama. I am a wife. I am with child. I am loved. Not in the way I imagined. But in a way that has made me more than I ever was. Forgive my silence. Pray for my strength. I carry you with me, always. Your daughter, Nima." A week passed. Then two. No word came. Until one night, when the moon rose pale and soft over the hills, a second rider came. He brought no letter, only a necklace. Nima recognized it instantly. Her mother's. The messenger bowed low. "She is gone." Peacefully. The morning after she received her shawl, Nima collapsed. She didn't wail. She didn't scream. She simply knelt in the soil, holding the necklace against her heart, whispering, "Mama. Mama." The brothers gathered around her like a wall. Keita placed his forehead against hers. Macau rested a steadying hand on her back. Tindo sat beside her and wept, for the first time in his life, openly. That night, no one slept. A fire burned in the courtyard as a vigil. Nima braided the necklace into her hair and sang a Kalungi morning song, her voice cracked and raw. "Greater than you gave me life from your breath. Now I give you life from mine. May the stars carry your name. May the wind carry your face. And may my child carry your strength." In the silence that followed, Nima felt something shift forever. Grief and love became one river inside her, flowing, unstoppable. The child in her womb kicked. And for the first time, she knew. She could carry it all. Her mother's memory. Her complicated, beautiful love for three men. Her longing for truth. Her hope for the child who would never know their grandmother, but would know what love looked like when it had no map. The night Nima went into labor, the sky was bright with stars. The winds of Umbal Valley had calmed. The tamarind tree outside her home rustled gently, its branches longer, fuller, its roots now deep in the same soil she had once feared. The pain came slowly at first, like a wave lapping at her edges. Then stronger. Fiercer. Her cries rang through the compound, calling every heart to stillness. Mama Yaya and the midwives moved quickly, lighting candles, boiling herbs, spreading clean cloth. The three brothers paced outside, helpless and pale. Keita stood by the window, his knuckles white against the frame. Tindo sat cross-legged under the mango tree, silently mouthing prayers. Macau, usually the strongest, leaned against the mud wall, whispering, "Hold on, Nima. Just hold on." Inside, Nima labored not just for a child, but for everything she had fought to become. A woman reborn. A mother. A soul that had survived silence, betrayal, grief, and had turned it into something strong enough to bring life. She bit down on cloth. Screamed into the darkness. Sweat poured from her brow like a second river. Then. A cry. Thin. Loud. Piercing. The child was here. A baby girl. The midwife placed her on Nima's chest. The little one blinked, as if surprised by the world, then curled against her mother's skin with a sigh of contentment. Tears slipped silently down Nima's face. "She's here, Mama," she whispered to the night. "She's here." By morning, the whole village had gathered. It was time for the naming ceremony. Drums sounded in rhythm with the heartbeat of the land. Women sang lullabies in harmony with the breeze. Children carried flowers and scattered petals around the house. Nima sat beneath the tamarind tree, her newborn in her arms. She wore a white wrapper with gold trim, blessed fabric from Kalungi. Around her neck hung her mother's necklace, braided tightly into her new identity. The three brothers stood beside her. The elders came forward. "It is time," one said. "What will this child be called?" Nima stood slowly. She held the baby high and spoke with a voice strong and steady. "Greater than her name is Amani. It means peace. Because that is what she has given me. Not by solving everything, but by teaching me to live with every truth at once." The crowd bowed their heads. Some cried. Some smiled. Even old Mama Yaya wiped her eyes and whispered, "She will walk between worlds." The elder looked to the brothers. "And whose child is she?" Mikau stepped forward. "She is mine. When she is in need of strength," Tindo said softly, "she is mine. When she seeks gentleness." Kito took Nima's hand and said, "She is mine. Every time she dreams." Then Nima spoke again, her gaze sweeping across them all. "Greater than she belongs not to one. She belongs to a home, a family born from tradition, and transformed by choice." The elder smiled, his voice warm. "Then let it be known, Amani, daughter of unity, child of courage, blessing of Kalungi and Ambal, has been born into love." The village cheered. Drums beat. And the little girl, eyes wide open now, watched the world she had been born into, a world strange and beautiful, shaped not by rules, but by the hearts brave enough to rewrite them. That night, under the full moon, Nima sat outside with her daughter sleeping against her chest. Kito lay beside her. Tindo carved quietly nearby. Mikau stoked the fire and hummed a lullaby. She looked at the home they had built, not perfect, not simple, but real. And she whispered into the wind. "Greater than Mama, I made it. I didn't follow the path. I made a new one." The wind answered softly, rustling the tamarind leaves. And in that moment, Nima knew. She had not just survived. She had become.